Good afternoon. Welcome to Vision TV, Youth Hour, with me, LAMIN. Today, I have a very important youth who today join us in Vision TV to discuss about some of the importance of National Assembly election and also how to ensure to make sure that we maintain peace and stability in the Gambia. It has been a while, this program, was put to hold, due to certain things or the other. But then today, inshallah, I am back again. As I told you, this program is exclusive for the young people of the country. Today, like I said earlier on, my brother Humble Man, he's here with me. In some time, I will allow him to introduce himself. My brother, today you are welcome to Vision TV.
Thank you so much, Lamin, for the invitation. And then good afternoon to all the Gambians out there and wherever you're watching. My name is Siman Lo. I'm a student at the University of Gambia, majoring in political science, and also serving as the Information Minister of the UTGSU. And it is indeed an honor to be here today.
You are most welcome, Siman. Very good. So, as Siman just alluded right now, he is the Information Minister for the University of the Gambia. Siman, today I would like us to discuss about the importance of National Assembly as a youth. How do you think it is important as young people in the Gambia, and of course by extension even the elders, that National Assembly election should be important?
Thank you so much. I think this is a very important question. When it comes to the word National Assembly elections, I think before you will talk about the election itself, it is good we know what is the importance of the National Assembly itself.
Indeed.
I mean, any country that wants to stand also to be able to develop, there is a need to have a parliament whereby policies are also debated upon, whereby we're able to discuss what is the fate of our country. And that is why if we go to the election itself, that is where the parliament comes in. Because we as Gambians are the ones who should now go and cast our votes and put people into the particular parliament to be able to represent our voice.
Definitely.
Because we cannot have all Gambians in a parliament. So every particular group of people will need a single individual to be able to represent you. So those people you are going to put in that office should be able to at least be the voice of the voiceless. They should be able to at least have the aspirations of the Gambians at heart. They should be able to make sure that Gambians and their wishes are always fought for. And that is why the elections that we are heading to by tomorrow, it's very much crucial. And every Gambian with a voter's card should not take it lightly. And then we must be able to know that we need Gambians who are going to speak for us. We need Gambians who are going to look at the interests of our country instead of political parties. Definitely. And that is what makes these elections very much important.
Indeed, indeed. Like he said, concerned about how important it is, National Assembly. Before we know the role of the National Assembly, but first we need to know the importance of the House itself. It's very, very important that you communicated very well there, concerning about how crucial people to ensure to understand that, going into the House, National Assembly, is of course should be something which, everybody should know at your fingertips. But I mean, Mr. Low, looking at when you look at the grassroots level, you will find out that there are some people there who does not in fact know the real importance of National Assembly. What are some of their oversight functions? Because you'll believe in me, there was a time when we were doing, of course, our coverage at Brikama Area Council. There comes this National Assembly aspirants who are vying for the position. We asked them about questions like what are some of the oversight functions of National Assembly. We believe that majority of them will tell us that, well, I am not in the House yet. Right. You understand? So I wanted to put, a light on that area to be able to let the viewers understand really what do you think could be some of those oversight functions that National Assembly members should be doing for their people.
Exactly. So it is imperative for us to also know that people we put into office should be competent enough. And I think that is where the use of knowing their roles as parliamentarians starts from. Because if I want to contest to be an assembly member, I should first know what my roles are. You cannot just contest for the sake of contesting. But then also we have to go back to the causes of all those factors. Before you talk about the oversight functions of the National Assembly, what are the roles that are even given to us as people? I mean, what makes me be able to vie in for the post of a parliamentarian? In our country at this point, even a grade 12 graduate can contest for elections. And that is why if you now ask them what their functions are, they wouldn't know. Now, oversight functions of a parliament depends on them being able to hold the government accountable, checks and balances. Because every executive member should be at least accountable of what you have done or what you have done to the country. And this must be an oversight duty of the parliament itself. So when we have a parliament whereby we have people with vision, those with ideas, those who have a way to see and reason well in a national perspective, then they'll be able to hold the president accountable of what he had promised Gambians. They should be able to look at our ministers and know whether they are doing things right or wrong. They should be able to look at the ways in which our duties as parliamentarians, or let's say as ministers in different bodies, are able to at least execute them in a very perfect way. And that is why the parliament serves as a way to look at oversight functions. If you look at the case of, let's say, South Africa, for instance, where we have Julius Malema, for instance, they always stand on the toes of the government because they want to make sure that the government is always on the right footing. So that includes the oversight duties of a parliament. You must have a check and balance itself. You must be able to put all executive members accountable and know that they have a public office they're holding. And in as much as their actions are not in line with the beliefs of the Gambians, it should not be accepted. So this is what gives us the role of having an oversight duty in a parliament.
Very good. Now, looking at the entire assessment of the National Assembly members, you compare to the last regime. What will you say compared to the last national legislative house and now? What could you say with their rate of pressing the government, the executive, to be able to make sure that their people's voice is being heard?
I think many Gambians were even aware of these parliamentary elections recently. In 2016. I've been here in Jammeh's time, but then the tenacity in which people now talk about these assembly elections is higher than the way it was in Jammeh's era. And if you look at the 2016 election too, Gambians were desperate to see a change.
Yes, to cut you short, what do you think could be that level of tenacity during Jammeh's time that people are not well informed concerned about elections?
Well, systems of governments they differ. Jammeh's government was more of a military government, even though it could be seen as a perpetuated democratic government. But then the issue is parliaments are supposed to look at the checks and balances. They're supposed to hold the executive members accountable.
Most definitely.
And a dictator would not allow people to be able to always look into what he or she does. So as a result, it was weakened. The independence of that particular body was not seen in those days. But when Barrow came in, we must also acknowledge part of his responsibilities, for we have seen that the parliamentarians had been seen. They were able to stand by themselves and also be able to stand against the government. Because we have seen the case of Yakumba Jete, who had a case against the government. And at the end, she was able to win that particular case. That tells us that the parliament has been a bit powerful. But then who are those we have in the parliament still becomes a question. It is us who vote for people. But who do we put into office? You have a parliamentarian in an office whereby the guy cannot even debate on a single and a mere policy. There are those who had been there for 5 years, they have never stood in debates and talked about anything. And those are the guys now who represent people in that particular parliament. So this will now tell you that the tenacity we have as of now, Gambians have seen the vision. They have a foresight. They know we cannot be developed in the absence of a parliament. And that is why now we have all risen up. We want to make sure that those going to the parliament are competent enough. They have informations, they have ideas, they have values, and they have morals. Because at the end, they will allow their political sentiments to overcloud what they do for the country. And that is where the failure of a country begins. When there is no parliament in place to hold them accountable, governments are going to disguise what they do. And as a result, we as the public, the people, would not know what exactly will be done in that particular office.
Definitely. Now, what do you think could be done, looking at the consequences liable, to be able to map out individuals to represent us as the National Assembly? What do you think could be areas that people need to be looking into?
Right.
Because I believe we shouldn't be handpicking people, individuals from nowhere. In fact, help me first to answer that question, then from there then we move to that.
So before talking about what should citizens look at to at least elect a parliamentarian, I think the question will circle down again to how those political parties also select their contestants. I must register my dismay in the way in which Gambians sometimes will accept people to contest in parliamentary elections. It is more like we look at them based on their political affiliations than their competency. I've seen a case whereby a UTG graduate, someone with a bachelor's holder, contests against a grade 12 graduate. And then the party had to choose the grade 12 graduate instead of a UTG holder, a BSc holder.
You must be serious, man.
So you must be seeing that, you observe that they are not looking at how loyal you are to the country, but they are looking at how loyal you are to the political party. Because once you go to a parliament, you are now bound to at least focus on the interests of the country. But recently we have seen a parliamentarian in the parliament, but they will vote based on what? Political beliefs. They will vote based on political parties.
So what do you think is that signaling to the country?
It is signaling to us that we are not taking our elections for the parliament seriously. It is a signal to us that we are not ready for development. It is a signal to us that we are not ready to be spoken for. Because we are voiceless in the absence of a parliament. So if we don't have a guy who is able to speak for us, knows what he or she does, that means we are failing. So there is a need for us to have a sense of vision. Choose a man or a lady who can represent us at the parliament. Let us not look at concepts whereby you are there for UDP, so therefore I'll contest for UDP. Or you are there for DOI, so I'll be there to at least promote the agendas of DOI itself. Because the political party is formed at the interest of a nation. If there was no state, there would be no political party. Despite them being there to be a hunting ground for the government still, they must look at the interests of the people. And the people is what builds the state. So there is a need for political parties to also look into competency instead of mere political beliefs of what they want people to be.
Definitely, definitely. It is quite definitely sudden looking at the storyline that you have just stated right now, looking at the grade 12 graduate and of course the university graduate. I believe to my point of understanding, I believe the chance should be given to that university graduate, because we understand that this individual is well prepared and he knows he'll be able to know sort of to push and pull with the executive to make sure that the aspirations of their people is being well addressed.
Obviously.
You understand? But like my own assessment sometimes when I sat down, I look at some of the election debates, at the QTV or some other media outlet, I tend to understand that people are not just, in the political field just because of, for the interest of the country, but they are there just because, as you said, the interest of their own political parties. I think that is something which, people need to refrain from. You should be seeing our country first, and seeing your country first, you have to, be well equipped. You understand? You have to be well informed, not just to be informed, but to be well informed, to be diverse in the area, so that anytime you are in the House of Parliament, the wishes and aspirations of your people should be fully addressed. I think that is well clear.
That is quite important,
yes.
And that is a reason why we need to go back to history, and we understand how we evolved as a country.
Definitely.
I mean, we have moved from the chains of colonialism, but again, there were people who stood for us and fought for us. If you look at the likes of A.F. Small. The man has spent his entire life without a family. He has passed away. Today you cannot know who is a children to Edward Francis Small. His entire life was focused on what? Nationalism. Making sure that Gambians are able to have a pride, a sense of belonging. That we have a state where we can now at least be proud of. So those people have fought for us without any sense of sentimentalities. They were patriotic, they focused on nationalist perspectives. And that is why today we can talk about the Gambia. But it is unfortunate that those who have now succeeded all those people are not looking at the history of how we evolved. But now we focus on what can I do to get from the government. It is always a famous saying from the former president of America, that's John F. Kennedy, that asks not what a country can do for you, but asks what you can do for your country.
Definitely.
But in the reverse formation, here it is like we're asking what can the government do for me instead of what can I do for the government. And that is why once you go into a public office, you focus on trying to loot. You focus on corruption. You are trying to build up yourself. So if you leave that particular office, you'll be able to stand independently. In as much as we use our public offices as a way to be wealthy, as a way to loot our public offers, we are going to retard our development purely.
Most definitely.
And unless and until we are also able to elect people who are not there for the interests of their own, but for the interests of the country, we are going to remain in the circles of underdevelopment and poverty as well.
Definitely, definitely. Now, going to the voting system, looking at the grassroots level, people vote individuals based on their own ways. Others might do it based on patronage, others might do it based on ethnicity. From your own point of view, from your point of assessment, what would you say that people are predominant? This is what they are doing. Or you can say, like for example, in those days they will tell you, okay, during Yajame's time, that the people in Fonyi, you understand, they do what we call, the ethnicity. They support the Yajame because they belong to the same, ethnic tribe line. Right. You understand? So most of us, what they do is like giving their entire vote to Yajame. And many will tell you that give Yajame the chance of winning. But I always put a question to that: if Fonyi alone is winning Yajame, then Yajame was not winning. You understand? But now, looking at your own point of assessment, what do you think is a kind of voting system people have been in Gambia?
Yes, I think if we can go back on a memory lane. Yes. We look into our recent presidential elections itself. We have seen the manner in which Gambians voted. We are not looking at people who we believe could lead us as a country. But then, most people will vote based on tribal line. That's the hard fact. People may sometimes tend to argue against that. But then, tribal politics has become more like a norm in the country here. And it is not about the politician, it is us as a public as well. A politician looks for a way to garner votes, and he looks for all possible means to get it. But then it is now that sense of belief that people also have on how do they have to vote. If you look at the recent elections, some will say they had voted against UDP and they vote for Barrow because they believe that UDP have the notion that they are the most powerful party in the country. And that was a notion they have made through what? A tribal line. This had been existing in Jammeh's era. This had been there even in Jawara's time. It is not only like recently. If you follow trails of Gambian elections, tribal politics had always been there. I will give you a case scenario. Okay. There was a time when Per Sanjay contested against Sadike Jawara. And Per Sanjay was believed to be a Wolof. The people of Banjul were also seen as Wolof. They rallied behind Per Sanjay. When Sadike Jawara won the elections, when he was supposed to be sworn into office, the people of Banjul said that he is not going to enter into State House to be sworn into office. Why? Because Per Sanjay has lost that election. And as a result, they even have to form a coalition, a very short marriage, I would call it, so that they can be able to put their supporters together and then be able to swear Jawara into office.
Interesting.
So that is tribal lines. We've come down to Jammeh's era. In 2016 elections, we have seen Jammeh on TV and give an abrupt insult to partisan tribes. That was very plain to all of us.
Yeah.
In the recent election we had in 2021 as well, we have seen political parties giving out statements that have also tried to promote what tribal lines. So tribal politics in the Gambia is more of a norm now. It is not about the politicians. If they have no sense of belief on what they should do, we as a citizen should focus on how should I put people into office. Do I have to vote because I'm a Wolof, or do I have to vote because this man can do the work for me? And that is why we will vote. In the next 1 year or 2 years, we start complaining that, well, we cast our vote for you, but now you're not satisfying us. A man who doesn't have any vision to lead you will not satisfy you.
Most definitely.
And we must understand the fact that governments are not to be given to any Tom, Dick, and Harry. Governments are to be given to those people who are leaders. With leaders, I mean those with a vision, those with ideas, and those who have a practical know-how of what they should do as individuals. So this all governments should know. And it's about time we got rid of voting based on tribal lines or tribal sentiments.
But others will also tell you that those with visions are not coming forward. Well, this is something which is something which we can say is certain. Those that which we think can come and lead us are nowhere to be seen. So the one which when they are, like the Englishman we say, when they are available, it's not available. If available becomes available, you understand. So these visionary people, we hardly see them coming forward. And these are the individuals that we need to be able to lead us.
Well, I will disagree at some point. I think those with vision have been coming to the limelight since the beginning. I mean, you cannot tell me that Halifa Saleh doesn't have vision. You cannot tell me that Dr. Sir doesn't have any vision. You cannot tell me that all those who contested in the recent elections have no vision. They came with ideologies. They have a vision. But then it is now upon us to either embrace their vision or denounce it. So they have been coming out. They have been contesting. But Gambians are not prepared for a change. In 2016, our only focus was what? A change of regime, not a change of how things work. And that was why, when the coalition was established, we all rallied behind the coalition, isn't it? After the elections, what happens? The marriage between the parties, they got divorced.
Yeah.
Why? Because they were looking at the interests of their own political
Definitely
parties.
speaking.
But then those are people who had a vision for the country. They had a very good time plan and also a work plan as well. If they were able to put their egos aside and work together, we would have seen a difference. But the politician in the country is selfish. The people who put them into office are selfish. Those who also would want to come and support them are selfish as well. So when three selfishness come together, what are we going to have? Failure.
Failure, indeed.
Come in our country. So this is the reason why we have been going backward.
Very good. As a political science student, what do you think could be injected in our political field, looking at the manner through which politics has been played in the Gambia here? What do you think?
I am a firm believer of politics with hygiene, even though some will argue that it may be hard in African politics. But then I am someone who's been inspired by Patrick Lodge Lumumba of Kenya. And if you have followed his teachings, he always talk about politics with hygiene. I mean, you don't have to bend your principles because somebody else has bent his or her principles. As a politician, you are a leader. And as a leader, people see you as a role model. So once you bend a principle for the interest of what you want to get, it is going to affect your actions as well. So I think one thing Gambians have to nurture, this applies to both politicians, is we need to practice politics with hygiene. And upon that too, there should be politics with ideas, not bigotry statements, not character assassinations. We have recently followed the campaign trail of most candidates in this assembly. And we've seen that they use character assassination as a way to lose votes, in most cases. In our own constituency in Sabah Sanjal,
yes,
I've been following the campaign trail. People will argue that when they go to the campaign trail, what they do is what? They try to move like impose onto the people. That because I was there before, if you don't put me into office, this and this will happen. That becomes a threat. So we must get rid of threats and focus on development. You must give us your policies, your plans for the country, and let's see what you can do.
Definitely.
And that will also mean civilians must also not see a politician's threat as a threat. I mean, they have nothing to harm you. In fact, they need us to put them into office. So if they want to give us a threat, let's use the threat as a strength upon us. And at the end, let's see who's going to feel the consequences.
But I believe only a level-headed individual will understand that.
That's the point.
Using those threats as what? As a strength.
And that is why we need to first work on our system of education. It's very key.
And that's where education comes.
That is where it comes in. If we want to have any change in this country, we must be able to develop a very dynamic system of education. A system whereby people are enlightened to know their roles, their duties, and their rights. A place whereby whether you are doing arts or commerce, you know what is the sense of patriotism and nationalism. A field whereby we can always know that as a citizen, it is upon me to help my country develop. But then if you look at our school systems, that is where selfishness begins. From the primary school down to grade 12, you as a student, what do you always intend? I would prefer to have an A1, but my colleague will have an F9. That's selfishness.
Indeed.
And when that person graduates from the school system and go to the college, the same trend continues. I would not want to cooperate with you. I would want to be selfish, to develop myself. When I go to the public office, still that is what continues. So instead of now having a team to work with, I will work alone. Because I feel like if I work with them, they are going to at least hamper my development as a person. So the system of education is very, very key here. We must be able to have a very dynamic, a very system whereby citizens will be enlightened, will be sensitized, and will be told what they can do to promote national development.
Very good. For those of you joining us right now, just to remind you, this is Vision TV Youth Hour. With me here, I have Honorable Seaman Law, and Seaman is definitely doing well with the team that we are discussing today. Definitely today we are discussing about the importance of National Assembly, and of course, also we'll be talking about how to ensure that we have peace and stability in the Gambia. You understand? So Seaman, like we still continue. What message do you have for the electorates? In making sure that they have a good representative in the House of Parliament.
I think
because what happened here, I understand that there is a sense of nepotism and favorism when they are trying to pick these individuals from their consequences. What do you say as well?
Obviously, there is a sense of nepotism and favoritism.
Yes.
I think that has even been seen in the case of Brikama South recently.
Okay.
When those who contested on the NPP, they went to an interview, and the first question being asked to them is, what tribe do you belong to? I've watched an interview of some of them, like those who wanted to contest, and they've been denounced of contesting, and they had their frustrations, and they've shown that it was a very, should I say, impolite way of them being interviewed. So my message as a concerned Gambian, my message as a peace advocate, my message as a political science student, and my message as a leader is, we must not allow politicians to trigger conflict within us or amongst us. We must not allow politicians to use us as a bait to achieve their interest. When a fisherman goes to fish, what does he do? He uses a bait to get a fish. Definitely. Politicians also will want to use a bait to get us as citizens. We now would have to get a sense of belonging, a sense of direction, a sense of vision, that we should not be seen as a bait, because we are stakeholders to national development. We are stakeholders who are only able to promote this country's development when we have the right person to represent us. And that is why we must preach peace. We must promote cohesion. We must not vote based on tribal lines. We must not criticize one another for our different beliefs and different political affiliations. Because as a human being, we have different tastes. Your favorite food could be Benachin, mine could be Domada, because we have a different taste. So we have a right to follow any party of our choice.
Definitely.
But again, we also have a right to follow those parties based on principles, based on ideologies, based on development policies that we should not compromise as citizens.
Most definitely, most definitely. Thank you very much. Rick, from there then, I would just like to give you this quote from the former president of the United States of America, Abraham Lincoln. He says, in a society whose young men and women are in a rate of constant slumber will never realize their point. But here in the Gambia, it's a different case. Our young people are in the race. How happy are you to see youths coming up this time around with their larger number to compete for the seat in the National Assembly?
I am truly gladdened to see young people coming up to the limelight. But again, I am a bit disappointed at some point. If you observe, most of those young people who come to contest these elections are standing independent. I hope you've observed that.
Yeah.
Most of them are independent. Then there's a question to be asked, why are they all going independent? Are we saying that those young people have no parties that they have always rallied behind? They do. But the issue is the parties does not want to also harbor them. So even though they have a quest to lead, they have a quest to help in national development, the old ones who are, the old folks who are there are not there to promote that space for them. So as a result now they have to stand independent. So they are driven with a motive, with a passion and also a commitment to serve the country. But then those who should be able to also create the platform for them are not looking at them. Instead, they frown at the interest and see them as more of like they're trying to overthrow the old folks system with a different system. So I will say kudos to all those who have contested and those who are all eager towards national development. But again, I will register my dismay and disappointment to those political parties that will denounce the young people from contesting because of an age or because of a belief that they have a Western ideology that could not work in our country as well.
Definitely, definitely. I think that is well clear from Honorable Simon Law. I think I'm really enjoying this program, honestly speaking. I am definitely learning, and I believe you're also learning a lot, viewers. Now, away from that, let's talk about the maintenance of peace. Because election, we all know, is always crucial. And peace and harmony. Peace is just human.
Right.
We breed peace. Understand, and we believe that wherever we are, we have to have peace, we have to enjoy it, just like as a human being.
Obviously.
What do you think would be very, very important for people out there to understand that peace should be something that should not be jeopardized, come be election or after election?
What could be important is just a reflection on how we are called globally, the smiling coast of West Africa. Being recognized as the smiling coast of West Africa, if you're smiling, there must be peace.
Definitely.
So I think there's a need for us to know that politics will come and go. Politicians will come and go. But the country will not go. It stays with us. So as citizens, we must understand the fact that before you can preach peace or be a peacemaker, there should be peace within you. And there can only be peace within you when you tolerate people. When you have that sense of being open up to people. You harbor whatever comes to you. But when you have a sense of, should I say, egoism or egocentrism with you, it is going to affect you. So peace is the ultimate solution. It's the ultimate. I remember going to a TV when they asked me, what is peace? And I said, peace is life. I don't have to waste my time and say, peace is this, peace is that. Peace is life. There is no life in the absence of peace.
In a simpler context, it's life.
Peace is life. Because today, if you want to go to school, there must be peace. If you want to get food to eat, there must be peace. Because who import food to the country? When there is no peace in the place where they import goods to the country, how can we get them? The recent case we can look at is the issue of Ukraine and Russia.
Definitely.
Because of a single conflict between two countries, it has affected us as Africans. Today, the price of fuel had increased. The price of a cup of oil had also increased because of a conflict between countries outside our continent. So that tells us that peace itself is life. And no single citizen should compromise the interests of the country's peace. For we must also make sure that the legacy built by our nationalist heroes. Sadike Jawara was a peaceful man. He also accepted diversity. He was tolerant. E.F. Small, though he was not a politician, but again he was a peaceful man. He was a unionist. He always had the belief of uniting Gambians into one. And that is why he's called as the watchdog of the Gambia. So I think there's a need for us to learn from those people and be able to maintain the same legacy as the smiling coast of West Africa.
Of West Africa. Very good. But there's, there is this question that I wanted to ask, looking at the circle of this election pool. You will understand that there are individuals who you are not seeing the consequences but today they are coming out to say that I want this position, I want to represent my position. When actually they are not seeing. I don't know whether you are realizing.
I've realized it.
So what will you highlight on that area? Because people don't know them, we don't see them. And today they are now coming to us that they need our votes.
Right. I think, like I said before, it all circles down to the age of enlightenment. I mean, Gambians have to go back through a revolution. I mean, mentality revolution of how do we perceive our roles as citizens. Most of us believe that you can only help your community when you are a leader or when you work for the government.
It is beyond that.
It's beyond that. There's a part you can play at a grassroots level, even before you go to any public office. I've been following the campaign trail of our area, Sabasanja, and I was surprised to hear from one of the contestants saying that I want to change this environment, but it can only be done if I am in the parliament. I was shocked.
Interesting.
And that man hasn't been doing anything towards our development. So you are saying now you're only going to focus on developing that particular area if you go into office. So what now is the reference for us? That when you go into office, you'll be able to safeguard those words you've given us. So development begins from the grassroots. If you want to be a politician, work for it before you become a politician. You must be able to have some efforts you've made to be able to realize, to make people realize that you have been there for them, you are there for them, and you will be there for them if you go into public office. If that is not done, to me, I think there's no sense of direction. And Gambians, or whoever wants to vote, should look at those people who were there for them when they were sad, when they had their frustrations, when they had their despairs, when they are pessimistic of what they had in their area, and use that to vote for those they believe could be able to sustain them and their livelihood.
Very good, very good. Tomorrow marks, I mean, the day for the election.
Right.
Is it on the 4th, right? Am I right?
Yes, it's tomorrow.
It's tomorrow.
Yes.
Very good. So, I mean, young people are watching, and we all know that their participation in politics is very, very key.
Obviously.
Yes. So I want you to help us to redefine nationalism and patriotism using their voters card to go and cast their votes.
Obviously. Immediately from here, I'll be heading out to the village to cast my vote tomorrow.
Wow.
Because I believe that single vote of mine could make a difference. And if I have a belief that just one vote will not make any difference, then a question of how responsible am I as a citizen will be raised to me. And again, in the next 5 years, whatever failed in my environment, I could be blamed for it, for not casting my vote.
Definitely.
So to me, I think every Gambian must realize that your vote is your voice, and your voice is your power, and your power is what we need for development. So not casting your vote is more of like living in an environment whereby there is a king, but you prefer to be the slave. You prefer to be always used and exploited by those people. You don't want your voice to be heard by the people in the outside environment. So that is why the importance of our vote cannot be emphasized. It's too important. I think it is as important as our life alone. Because we are Gambians, we need a better life.
Definitely.
We want to see a prosperous Gambia. But for that to happen, we must have a leader who is able to at least help us promote the development. So whatever we get in the next 5 years depends on that vote you are going to cast tomorrow. Being in any particular environment you are going, do not see your vote as unimportant. Do not see your vote as not being able to make any difference. Because one vote could make a lot of difference. And even if your vote doesn't have any margin, it is important that you have your civic duty to go and cast your vote so as to be seen as a patriotic Gambian. And then to circle down to to redefine the term patriotism and nationalism, that should define us on how should we cast our vote tomorrow. You may have your political affiliations, but then your party and their contestant may not be the best in the elections. So I think it is good for us to first look at how do I love my country, to the extent of how can I sacrifice my party for the interest of my nation. But if you want to sacrifice the interest of the nation for the interest of your own party, then we're going to leave a record. We will leave a negative legacy as a citizen, and this will affect us. So nationalism is having that sense of belonging to your nation, having that sense of love to your nation, having a sense of pride to your nation. And whenever you have pride with you, you wouldn't allow any other factor to compromise the pride you have to your nation. So all those voting tomorrow should focus on the interest of the country, should focus on the interest of those people who are going to be served. And then they must also know that there are few pillars that every parliamentarian needs. One, a parliamentarian should have ideas. You should be able to debate on policies. You should be able to have your principles of transparency and accountability. You should respect your words. You should be ethical. You should be fearless, because you are going to serve the people, and that will remind you, or that will also involve you into going against the government. So that sense of being fearless is what we need. So we need the likes of Halifa Sallah, as we had recently, who will stand at the parliament and contest against a government policy, who will stand at the parliament and contest against a policy he believes will not be at the interest of the state. We need the like of Julius Malema in our parliament, who will not look at the eyes of any politician, who will not say, this is Mr. President. But if the president is a fool, tell him you are a fool. If he is wrong, tell him you are wrong. If he comes with a way to find a way to loot us as a country, tell him it is impossible practically. But in as much as we do not want to have that sense of being fearless, you're going to promote our failure as a state.
Good. And for the viewers out there, Gambians brothers and sisters out there, and non-Gambians alike,
Right.
yes, because we also believe that they also keep watching the election moves in the Gambia. What message do you have for them?
To the viewers, you mean Gambians?
And non-Gambians alike.
Non-Gambians alike. Election is multidimensional. I mean, the person who may create conflict does not only have to be the voter. A man who does not vote can still be a reason to trigger conflict. So, to the non-Gambians out there, if you have no documents to be able to cast your votes in our national politics, then the best thing you can ever do is to at least ask those friends around you to go and cast their votes. And again, we must understand, as a state, we have our own principles, our rules, and our regulations. And every Gambian out there should also be able to respect our sovereignty, be able to respect the influence of our leaders, but again, respect the legacies made by our politicians before. Therefore, we will solicit from you to be an ambassador who is going to promote peace within this country, to be an ambassador who is going to also influence others who don't want to go and cast their vote to go and vote. We will implore upon you to be that person who will not be a trigger to conflict, but instead a change maker, an agent of promoting our welfare as a country, and most importantly, be that guy who will be an international nationalist individual. That is to say, despite you not being part of this country, you are here with us and we love you. We want to also promote our national interests at large.
Very good. As a youth man, finally, what message do you have for the young people of the Gambia regarding this election?
To the young people, all my activities had been to promote youth empowerment, to promote ethical leadership, to promote peace within the country, to promote political hygiene. And I think all those things rest on our shoulders. Chinua Achebe will say that we are the young soakers who will rise when the old banana dies.
Definitely.
And that means we must also focus on what is the interest of our country. We must learn from the weaknesses of our country. We must look at people who we believe could be an inspiration to us. But then when we realize that the person does not inspire us positively, it is always good we cut off that and look for a better way to promote our country's development. So I implore you to all go out in your large numbers tomorrow at your various constituencies and cast your vote. Cast your vote for the man you believe is competent, for the man you believe has the technical know-how, the man you believe has the moral and the ethical background, the man you believe has the leadership records to be able to serve your welfare and speak for you as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Honorable Simon Law. It has been a very, very interesting conversation with Mr. Law here, and I believe he has spoken far in length concerning about the importance of election and also what are some of the expectations of the National Assembly members and all that. I think definitely we need to comment him for that. On behalf of Vision TV team and of course the name of Youth Hour, we really appreciate your comment here. And to the viewers, we will tell you, okay, the program will be coming to you in your subsequent times. So like I always said, I'll be your host for the program, LAMIN.